and thanks for joining me this morning. I'm going to start off today by talking to you about how to have success with multifocal contact lens fittings. I'll introduce myself. I'm Erin Rueff. I am currently the Chief of the Cornea and Contact Lens Services at the Southern California College of Optometry at Marshall B. Ketchum University. I'm going to talk to you today about multifocal contact lenses and talk to you about some of the research I've done trying to better understand why patients do or don't succeed with certain types of contact lenses, specifically presbyopic contact lenses. So let's get started and dive right in. So before we talk about how to have success with multifocals, I want to talk to you about sort of what we're doing as optometrists in the market. Let's look at some prescribing trends as far as how we're serving or maybe underserving our presbyopic patients. So the good news is that the utilization of presbyopic contact lens options is on the rise. If we look at 2011, for example, so about 10 years ago, about 40% of presbyopic contact lens wearers were actually wearing a presbyopic modality. So what that means is about 40% of patients in a presbyopic age range were actually utilizing a monovision or multifocal modality. That's not great, right? In 2020, we can see that that's increased a little bit. We see that about 50% of those presbyopic aged wearers are wearing a multifocal and about 9% were wearing monovision. So that's great, right? That's about 60% of our presbyopes who are using some sort of presbyopic quote unquote design. You could look at that stat as bad news though too, because that means that about 40% of our presbyopic contact lens wearers are not wearing lens modalities that address their presbyopic visual needs. That's their near visual needs. That's their intermediate computer distance visual needs. That's their conversational, sort of having lunch with a friend visual needs. That's a lot of contact lens wearers who aren't being, fully visually served by the contact lenses that they're wearing. The other bad news is that most patients who are wearing contact lenses or who are seeking a contact lens fit or update are in or approaching the presbyopic the presbyopic age range. So if we look here at different countries across the world, including the United States, you can see that the average age of contact lens fits is in the late 30s or early 40s. So that really means that the majority of the patients that you're fitting could benefit from a multifocal. Specifically, I'm going to try to encourage you today, or just generally a presbyopic contact lens design. So we as eye care providers need to make sure that we're providing and suggesting the very best visual options to our patients as they're progressing and maybe entering into presbyopia. It will benefit your practice if you're fitting these patients in presbyopic modalities, because it's likely that the person down the street isn't. And if you can be the one who utilizes these technologies and again, most completely serves your patient's visual needs, you'll provide them with a service that someone else can't. So today we're going to talk about how to have success with multifocal contact lenses and why some of us might be a little hesitant to fit some of these lenses. Why are these prescribing trends so low? Why, again, are we so hesitant to fit presbyopic contact lenses in our presbyopic contact lens wearers? Well, here's a sort of laundry list of things that might influence that. One, it might be a lack of fitting skills. So maybe we're just not confident in our own skills. Maybe we haven't done enough, or maybe we don't think we've done enough to learn about the lenses. I'm going to talk to you today about how to have more confidence in your fitting skills, and it doesn't take that much time or effort. Similarly, we might have just a general lack of product awareness. We might have preconceptions about what is or isn't available to us parameter-wise, potentially, or how good or bad the technology that exists out there might be potentially, and therefore just not be aware of the options that are available. Similarly, many people think there's sort of not a quote unquote perfect or good option for most of our patients. And so, some people will just sort of throw their hands in the air. That lack of awareness, all you can do to improve that is to open your eyes and be aware and seek out that information in the market. This last bullet point here, I'm going to dive into a little more deeply though. There's a lot of preconceptions we have as practitioners that might be influencing our willingness to fit presbyopic contact lenses in our patients. And I want to address some of those here and try to prove to you that those preconceptions are more like misconceptions. They're based in actually not a whole lot of fact or evidence. And if we look at some of the evidence in the literature, we can see that those are misconceptions. And hopefully we can use that evidence to change how we practice and to better serve our patients. So let's address some of those misconceptions we as eye care providers might have about presbyopic contact lens wear. The first is that presbyopes in general have worse dry eye than non-presbyopes, which makes them, less likely to be successful contact lens wearers. It's important to remember that when we talk about symptoms and signs of dry eye increasing with age, that increase in age is seen in later stages, older ages, so over the ages of 50, 60, 70. We're not talking about huge differences in dryness when I compare a 35-year-old to a 45-year-old or a 40-year-old to a 50-year-old. And in fact, there's been several studies in contact lens wearers specifically that have shown that symptoms of dryness and signs of dry eye are not associated with age in contact lens wearers. Also, we've seen evidence that the disruption caused to the tear film and the ocular surface by a contact lens is very similar in presbyopes compared to non-presbyopes. So we really can't, rest on that assumption that our presbyopic contact lens wearers are going to have worse dry eye than our non-presbyopes because the evidence doesn't really show that. In fact, the study by Detroit in 2011, I really liked the quote that they used in one of their conclusions, is that wearing contact lenses seems to influence dry eye symptoms more than age or gender. Therefore, presbyopes should not be excluded from consideration of contact lens fitting. What they're saying is things like age and gender that we typically associate with general dry eye, we don't see those trends influence whether a patient is or isn't successful with contact lens wear, specifically in our presbyopic contact lens wearers. So we shouldn't hang on that preconception or misconception that our presbyopes are going to have worse dry eye than our non-presbyopes and therefore make the whole contact lens fitting process harder. Another preconception or misconception is that presbyopes tend to have more discomfort and dropout than non-presbyopes. It has certainly been reported in the literature that in general, contact lens discomfort and discontinuation increase and are associated with increasing age. It's also been reported that discomfort and dryness are the primary reasons for discontinuation in all contact lens wearers. Now, when I make those wide declarations, it's important to note that most of the studies that made those conclusions were looking at a sample of participants that was of all age ranges. So from teenage years to, elderly age. That included participants of all ages and didn't specifically look at presbyopic contact lens wearers. When we look at presbyopic contact lens wearers, we can see that reasons for discontinuation and discomfort might actually be different than when we sample a group of all age ranges. And I think it's really important to consider that and recognize that in this group of patients, presbyopes, that have unique visual and comfort demands and potentially complaints, we need to really be surveying them specifically and asking them specifically why they are or are not satisfied with their contact lenses, why they are or are not comfortable in their contact lenses. So I actually did that a few years ago. We did a survey-based study where we surveyed presbyopic contact lens wearers only about their experiences with their contact lenses. So we had about 500 presbyopic contact lens wearers. And as you can see, about 15% of them reported that they had permanently discontinued contact lens wear at some point since initiating contact lens wear. And so we asked them, why? We asked them questions. Why did you discontinue? What did you think about your comfort? What did you think about your vision? We asked them just questions about themselves, demographic questions, what type of lenses they were wearing. And interestingly, we found that things like age and gender, lens material, lens design type, all of these things were not associated with discontinuation. So while in those studies that looked at large groups of patients with a wide age range, they reported that things like gender and age influenced discontinuation. When we talked to just presbyopic contact lens wearers, we found that age, gender, and lens type didn't really influence a person's likelihood of discontinuing contact lens wear. You want to know what did influence discontinuation? Vision, and vision at all distances. So in this sample, the discontinued wearers had worse overall opinions of their vision at distance, intermediate, and near vision, which is really interesting. A lot of the discontinuation studies before this didn't even ask patients about their vision. Especially in presbyopic contact lens wearers, we need to be considering more than just comfort. We really need to be asking these patients about vision and their quality or lack thereof quality of vision with their contact lenses. You can see in the sample of presbyopic contact lens wearers, vision seems to be pretty important in the likelihood of these patients continuing in contact lens wear. We also asked these patients why they discontinued contact lens wear. Again, a lot of those studies, sorry, my toolbar here is covering up. It was disappeared before, so I apologize if you can't see that. This graph is showing reasons for discontinuation in these presbyopic contact lens wearers. These two bars on the right are representing poor vision and discomfort as being the primary reason for patients reporting discontinuation. And what I want to point out here is that poor vision and discomfort were the primary reasons for discontinuation, and they were essentially the same. So there was really no statistical difference between the number of people who reported poor vision as their reason for discontinuation and the number of people who reported discomfort as the reason for their discontinuation. And I would argue in presbyopic contact lens wearers, it's sometimes hard to parse out the difference between comfort related to ocular surface comfort and dryness and comfort related to vision, because symptoms like eye strain and asthenopia and eye fatigue can really be confused with dryness and discomfort. And so I would argue that a lot of these patients that reported poor vision also had some discomfort. And some of the patients that reported discomfort probably had some discomfort related to visual discomfort. So when you're fitting presbyopic contact lens wearers, you really need to keep that in mind, that comfort and vision can overlap and sort of confound one another. And we need to really think about targeting both of those things to achieve satisfaction with each individual part. We need to really think about how vision affects comfort in our presbyopic contact lens wearers and acknowledge that vision and comfort are intertwined. And by acknowledging both of those things and really trying to optimize both vision and comfort, we can have success with our presbyopic contact lens wearers. There was a really interesting clinical trial that came out a couple years ago that actually compared spherical soft toric lenses to spherical soft lenses to toric soft lenses, and wanted to look to see how vision and comfort were related, how patients reported satisfaction with vision compared to their actual visual acuity. And in this trial, let me move this really quick. My own face is in my way here. In this trial that evaluated perception of comfort with various soft toric lenses, they found and reported that comfort scores or greater comfort scores were observed with greater subjective vision. When patients had a better opinion of their vision, they had a better opinion of their comfort. Things like objective visual acuity, so the lowest line that they read on the visual acuity chart was not significant. So acuity was not predictive of comfort, and acuity wasn't particularly predictive of subjective vision assessment. Interestingly, symptoms of ocular discomfort tended to be associated with the quality of the vision. So patients were more comfortable if they felt their vision was good. They were less comfortable if they felt their vision was bad. I don't think that's like rocket science, right? That's not super surprising, but I think as clinicians, it's really easy to put ourselves in the comfort bucket as like ocular surface and dry eye, and the vision bucket as let me show you my phoropter and my loose lenses, right? It's really important to remember though, that your patient's opinion and subjective experience with their vision is really going to influence their perception of comfort with their lenses. And this study was looking at non-presbyopic soft toric contact lens wearers, but I think we can extrapolate these conclusions to our presbyopic contact lens wearers and see that we need to optimize vision in these patients in order to optimize their comfort and their overall wearing experience. And the only way to do that for presbyopes is to utilize the multifocal contact lens options we have available to us. So for presbyopic contact lens wearers, it's easy to assume that vision is affected only by optics and comfort. Only by optics, and comfort is affected only by the lens and the ocular surface. But that's not really true. Visual correction and comfort perception are going to compound in our presbyopic contact lens wearers to contribute to their overall contact lens wearing experience and opinion. So in our presbyopic contact lens wearers, we're going to want to aim to optimize vision and comfort at the same time. And throughout that process, consider how they influence one another. Consider how changing vision or optimizing vision can influence comfort, or how things like, considering lens material and ocular surface can influence vision. Those two things are going to interact with one another and compound to result in our patient's overall visual and comfort experience. So we will start by talking about optimizing comfort. We're going to go over ways to optimize both comfort and vision, but we'll start first by talking about comfort. So you do need to address the ocular surface, right? We do want to make sure that we optimize the ocular surface and refine the ocular surface before we even put a contact lens on the eye, to make sure that we're sort of setting ourselves up or starting from the best place possible. So that's going to start first by obviously treating existing dry eye and meibomian gland disease. We want to establish a healthy ocular surface foundation early and throughout the fitting process and throughout a patient's wearing history to make sure that the ocular surface isn't messing us up. So this is going to be just talking to patients early on about, that healthy ocular surface foundation, lid hygiene, making sure they're taking their makeup off at night, cleaning in and around the meibomian glands, showing patients in office how to clean their meibomian glands. I think it's so important to actually, wrap a lid wipe around your finger and kind of give them a visual example of how to clean their lid so that they know exactly the area they should be cleaning. Talking to our patients about lubrication, and I always talk to my patients about proactive lubrication with artificial tears versus reactive lubrication. So while it's fine to throw a tear in, when your eyes are feeling really dry in the moment, we want to get in a habit of using proactive lubrication throughout the day. When I wake up, I put in a tear. Before I go to bed, I put in a tear, just to establish a healthy ocular surface. And finally, we also want to control allergies. It's spring right now. Allergies are starting to sort of emerge in our patients. And this is a really good time of year to remind patients that, you can also be proactive about your allergies. So getting on an allergy drop early, kind of trying to address allergy symptoms before they become a problem, can really go a long way in helping a contact lens fit be successful. The next way to optimize comfort is to choose a daily disposable. The daily disposable availability in the multifocal category has really exploded in the last 5 years. I mean, if you think about 3 or 4 years ago, what was available to us in the daily category compared to now, it has really increased in the last few years, and it's going to continue to increase. There are new products coming down the pipeline this year. So that's really exciting that daily disposable options exist for hyperopes and myopes in the presbyopic category of all refractive error magnitudes. And the nice thing is too, is that most manufacturers will maintain the same or similar optical design in their 2-week, monthly, and daily multifocal products. So if you have an existing patient that's already in a biweekly or monthly replacement modality, you can pretty easily transition them into a daily disposable. And because we're getting more products, the range of price points that's available to us in these daily disposable options is widening as well. So we can really address our patients' financial concerns if they have them with different options in this category. So just to kind of show you, this isn't an extensive list of every daily disposable, and I don't have any disclosures here of every daily disposable in the market, but these are sort of the ones I reach for the most, sort of the most contemporary daily disposable multifocal options from all of the big 4 manufacturers. So you can see there's a wide range of options available to us in those daily disposable multifocal options. Okay, the next strategy to optimize comfort, I'm going to say, is to optimize vision. Again, they're so intertwined, right? Comfort and vision influence each other. And so while we can talk about the ocular surface, things like managing dry eye and meibomian gland disease, using a daily disposable because we know that's the cleanest, healthiest, most comfortable option for our patient, we need to recognize that vision affects comfort in these patients. And in order to optimize comfort, we have to optimize vision. So we'll end today by talking about several different strategies to optimize vision in your presbyopic contact lens wearers. First things first, start with good data. I know it can be easy to look at the patient's last manifest refraction. Maybe they were in 4 months ago for a comprehensive exam and they're coming back today for a fit, and you did a refraction then, so you just want to use that. I really encourage you to do a fresh manifest refraction on the day of the fitting. You never know, it may not have been you who did the last manifest refraction. Some significant time might have passed since the last manifest refraction. We really want to start this fitting process with very accurate data. And to do that, we need current data. And also, again, you never know who did the last refraction. So make sure you did it to ensure that it was done well and correctly. When you're doing that manifest refraction, I really encourage you to push plus power in the distance. It's, with a young or emerging presbyopic patient, it's still pretty easy to over minus them if you're not careful, right? But it's really important to acknowledge that, especially with a multifocal contact lens, every little bit of plus power in the distance is helpful. Every quarter, every click of plus power in the distance is only going to help your patient up close. And so I'm really curious to see how much plus a patient will take in the distance that maybe doesn't make their vision better or worse per se, because I know it will make their vision better at near in the long run. So when you're doing that manifest refraction, make sure you push plus power in the distance. Next, remember to refine that astigmatic correction. Again, if they recently were in for an exam, or you've got some somewhat recent data, it might be easy to just throw out their astigmatic correction or round it down or just ignore it altogether. But I really encourage you to refine that astigmatic correction, because that little amount of astigmatism, that extra bump in clarity, could be the difference between your patient having excellent vision and just okay vision that makes them go back to their glasses. So make sure when you have that patient in the phoropter, you're refining that astigmatic correction. Finally, when you're determining the ad, make sure you determine the functional ad power for your patient. Not everyone has their near demand at 40 centimeters. We might have our near demand at greater or less distances than 40 centimeters. And you're only going to determine that by talking to your patient and asking them about their visual needs, their visual activities, and what they need to accomplish with their lenses. Oftentimes, a full presbyope who has a 250 ad at 40 centimeters may not actually be looking at things at 40 centimeters very often. Maybe their computer is at 60 centimeters or something like that. And so talking to your patient about where they want to hold things, where their sort of critical near distances will help you determine a functional add going into the fitting process. Okay, the next thing to optimize vision is to choose a multifocal. And obviously the title of this course was, success with multifocal contact lens fittings, but I really need to underline to you why it's important to choose a multifocal for all of your presbyopic contact lens wearers. Multifocals are the best visual option for every presbyopic contact lens wearer. I know that some of you who've practiced for a while might say, well, but what about an astigmatic patient? What about a super high myope or a super high hyperope? We don't have lenses that address those patients. That is really not the case anymore. Those sort of attitudes are sort of left over from a time when we didn't have great optical designs with our multifocal contact lenses, when we didn't have really wide parameter ranges with our multifocal contact lenses. When we did need to resort to monovision for a lot of our patients who maybe couldn't achieve good enough vision with multifocals, or who maybe didn't fall in a parameter range of a multifocal that was on the market. But we're not in that time anymore. In 2022, we have parameters that address almost every presbyope you could find. And the evidence out there tells us that multifocals are superior to monovision time and time again. And most importantly, patients prefer multifocal contact lenses over monovision. So before I show you some of that evidence to kind of prove that to you, let's just review what a multifocal is. The majority of multifocals on the market right now we can think of as simultaneous or aspheric designs. What that means is there's sort of a gradient of power on the contact lens. Most of these lenses are center near designs, meaning that the center of the lens is the sort of near or plus power. And as we move out peripherally in the lens, the power gets more minus. Basically, how these lenses work is they focus multiple images on the back of the eye at the same time. And your brain kind of decides what to pay attention to based on what you're paying attention to. So there's obviously advantages and disadvantages to every type of lens modality or optical design. The major advantages that we get with multifocals, especially compared to monovision, is that one, our patients get to maintain binocularity and therefore get to maintain stereopsis and depth perception, which is important. Additionally, they get to enjoy a range of clear near vision instead of vision that's corrected for just two distinct distances. We can kind of think of a multifocal compared to monovision as comparing a PAL spectacle lens to a flat top bifocal, right? The benefit of the range of clear vision that a PAL provides over a flat top bifocal makes up for some of that maybe peripheral distortion a patient might get. Same with a multifocal contact lens. By giving our patient binocular clear range of near vision compared to monovision, where we just get one set near distance, our patients can really move through life a lot more smoothly and be less reliant on reading glasses or some other type of correction. Now, you're all aware, I'm sure, of some of the disadvantages associated with multifocal contact lenses, things like glare and halos, reduced overall quality of vision at one or more distances. But those disadvantages, as our technology improves with our modern products, are really becoming less and less impactful for our patients. And when we look at the evidence comparing multifocals to monovision, we can see that those disadvantages might seem like bigger disadvantages to us as eye care providers. It seems our patients don't mind them as much as we think they might. And part of that reason is that eye care providers are often going to focus on the objective visual finding, or sort of the lowest line a patient can read on the chart. But our patients focus on their entire visual experience. They think about, was I able to go out to dinner without taking my reading glasses with me? Was I able to drive my car and pretty well see the roadsides and my dash and, look at my GPS. Was I able to see all of those things without squinting or struggling or feeling like I needed reading glasses? The patients are going to evaluate their entire wearing experience, which does include visual acuity, right? It does include what's the lowest line on the chart that I can read, but it includes so many other things as well. Things like depth perception, range of clear vision, range of near vision, real world visual function. All of those things are going to work together and compound to give our patients a sense of if their wearing experience is good or bad, and if they want to continue with these lenses. So let me show you some evidence. I like to look at facts. So this study by Woods et al. Directly compared the visual performance of multifocal contact lenses to monovision in patients that were presbyopic. So interestingly, in this study, they've reported that the distance and near visual acuity were both better with monovision. So objectively, distance vision and near vision, the line on the chart that a patient could read, was better with both of those were better with monovision. But the patients seem to prefer multifocals. So despite the fact that their objective clearest vision was best with monovision, subjectively, they tended to favor the multifocal. Basically, if they were asked, hey, which lens do you prefer? Which one do you want to take home with you? They preferred the multifocal. This study group concluded that making a prediction of success or not based on acuity room tests alone is probably unwise, because in the real world, the multifocal seem to be preferred. I love that quote. It's so true, right? It's easy for us in the middle of a busy patient day of exams, and you're running from room to room, to just be like, okay, well, they read 20/15 with this lens and only 20 with this lens, so I'm going to prescribe this one. Well, I know that might be easiest for you, but the patient's going to have the most success if you actually ask them which they preferred, which lens sort of performed better for them in real life. Another study similarly compared multifocal contact lenses to monovision. They compared multifocals and monovision on lots of different clinical parameters and subjective parameters, and reported that monovision, again, performed better than the multifocal for distance and near VA, but that's about it. That's about all that the monovision seemed to be better at than the multifocal. The multifocal option provided better stereo acuity, so better depth perception. The multifocal, no surprise, provided better near range of clear vision. And there was little difference in things like contrast sensitivity between the multifocal and the monovision. So again, while acuity alone was better with monovision, the visual experience was better with multifocals. In fact, this group concluded that a better balance of real-world visual function may be achieved due to minimal binocular disruption. They really felt like the fact that multifocal helps you maintain binocularity and sort of give you the best binocular vision experience was the reason why the multifocal patients seem to be happier or subjectively prefer the multifocal compared to monovision. Really important, right? Again, it's really easy for us to get stuck in our chart just looking at the lowest line that a patient can read, but what these studies are showing us is that our patients want to be in multifocals. They may not even know that they want to be in multifocals. They may not know that something like this exists. They may not have the language or the vocabulary to describe why they would do better with a multifocal. So us as eye care providers need to recognize that to best serve them. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you to always choose a multifocal contact lens for your patient. And I tried to convince you last time that, parameter availability shouldn't hold you back from using a multifocal contact lens. And I feel confident in saying that even your astigmatic presbyopic contact lens wearers have a multifocal option that is available to them. And it's really important in our presbyopes that we're addressing astigmatism as sort of enthusiastically as we are addressing presbyopia, because uncorrected astigmatism can lead to visual discomfort in any contact lens wearer, but especially in our presbyopic contact lens wearers. It's easy to just take the spherical equivalent of a patient's prescription. Maybe they have a diopter of astigmatism and you're like, oh, I'll just, fudge it, do the spherical equivalent and pull a lens for them. But there's a lot of evidence out there that suggests that uncorrected astigmatism can influence a patient's subjective satisfaction with their contact lenses and also their perception of comfort. Remember that clinical trial I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, where they compared soft toric contact lenses to soft spherical contact lenses in a group of non-presbyopic contact lens wearers. But again, I'm going to remind you, they found that comfort scores were associated with subjective vision assessments. So the better patients felt their vision was, the better their perceived comfort was. And acuity was not a predictor. In this study, and I should say this was a study of relatively low toric patients. So these weren't like 2 diopter astigmats. These were like 1 diopter astigmats. Patients preferred the toric lens over and over again compared to the spherical lens. And I think it's really important to point out that they had better perceived comfort with the toric lens when the only difference, between the lenses was optics. There was no physical difference. The lens was the same material, same parameters. So it's important to note that toric contact lens wearers are going to have better perceived comfort, probably because that toric lens better addresses their vision. There's also been a really interesting study by Stephanie Cox that came out in 2018, where they similarly looked at toric contact lenses and compared them to spherical contact lenses in a group of, again, these were non-presbyopic contact lens wearers. They found that in these low toric patients, so again, these are patients with just a little bit of astigmatism, 0.75, 1 diopter of astigmatism, they preferred the toric lens to the spherical lens over and over again. I'm trying to use this evidence to underline to you that even small amounts of astigmatism can make a difference visually for our patients. And so when we're thinking about presbyopes, we really want to make sure that we're addressing astigmatism in order to address their vision and therefore address their comfort. One interesting conclusion that this study made was that scores on the Convergence Insufficiency Symptom Survey improved with toric lenses in these low toric participants. So why is that important? The CISS is a survey that asks questions specifically related to convergence insufficiency. But if you look at the questions on the CISS, they're really asking questions about visual discomfort, right? Things like eye strain, vision coming in and out, blurry vision while reading. And actually, they're asking a lot of questions about visual comfort while doing near activity. So you could even extrapolate some of those questions to be applicable to our presbyopic contact lens wearers. So when CISS scores improve with a contact lens modality, we can sort of extrapolate that data to kind of suggest to us that visual comfort is better with these toric lenses compared to spherical lenses in this group of patients with just low amounts of astigmatism. So in our presbyopes, when we see a presbyope with 0.75 diopters of astigmatism, 1 diopter of astigmatism, we really want to make sure we're considering an astigmatic multifocal for that patient in order to make sure that we're correcting every little detail of their vision to really nail their visual comfort. In the past, we really didn't have a lot of astigmatic presbyopic options. In the past, astigmatism was a reason why we were often fitting our patients in a monovision setup, in a monovision modality, because we didn't have good multifocal options that addressed astigmatism. That's not the case anymore. In the last several years, we've actually seen 2 products hit the market that address presbyopia and astigmatism. So multifocal contact lenses that have toric correction. One is the ultra multifocal for astigmatism made by Bausch and Lomb, and more recently, Biofinity Toric Multifocal has come out for CooperVision. Now, I should say CooperVision historically also had the ProClear Toric Multifocal that's been available for several years. But with Biofinity coming out and sort of that upgraded silicone hydrogel material, that makes an even better option for our patients. I'd say if in all honesty, the only downside to addressing astigmatism in our presbyopes right now is that we don't really have any daily disposable options available to us just yet. I am confident that that will come in hopefully soon, hopefully in the coming years. But until then, we have two really great monthly replacement options that are comfortable, that the optics of the multifocal itself are really excellent for both of these options, and that have a wide range of astigmatic correction as far as magnitude of still that they correct, and also axis availability that they correct, that we can utilize for our astigmatic presbyopes. Okay, the next way we can optimize vision and therefore optimize comfort in our presbyopic contact lens wearers is to consider our emerging presbyopes. Presbyopia doesn't just happen overnight. I know we all know that, and I know our patients find that hard to believe, but it's really important to remember that presbyopia is a process that's happening throughout our entire lifetime. Our accommodative amplitude sort of starts waning, in childhood, and really starts to amp up. The amplitude waning starts to amp up as we age in our 20s and 30s. And while symptoms like near blur may not happen in our late 30s or early 40s, symptoms associated with early presbyopia certainly can. So things like eye fatigue, maybe some blur at the end of the day that wasn't there at the beginning of the day, just general strain, fatigue, and discomfort in and around the eyes can happen in our late 30s and early 40s before patients report like clear or distinct visual blur at near. It's also important to recognize that spectacle wear could alleviate some of these early presbyopic signs in our myopic spectacle and contact lens wearers, because they can kind of peek under their glasses, right? So if a patient is feeling really uncomfortable in their contact lenses, maybe because they're getting some presbyopic eye strain, they put their glasses on, peek under their glasses to see up close. They may not even recognize they're doing that. And they might perceive that discomfort goes away with their glasses when really they're just, optically kind of cheating the system, if you know what I mean. I love this graph here that shows us how accommodative amplitude changes and decreases in magnitude as we age. It's sort of this sigmoidal curve, and you can see that while it does decrease, throughout childhood and our teen years, there's a really steep decline in our 30s. So, that slope is really steep between age 30 and 40. And while these 30-somethings may be able to achieve near or clear near vision, they certainly could be experiencing accommodative fatigue, especially at the end of the day, especially with really high demand near tasks. And they could be contributing that fatigue, that eye strain, to contact lens wear when it's not really related to contact lens wear. I actually did a clinical trial where we sort of tested this theory in a group of 30-something uncomfortable contact lens wearers. And we found that those contact lens wearers approaching 40 years old had similar reported comfort with single vision and low ad powered multifocal lenses. Our younger 30-somethings definitely did prefer single vision contact lenses, but as these participants approached 40 years of age, they actually began to prefer the multifocal for things like vision and comfort compared to those younger wearers. And I'll show you the lens preferences here. So in the younger group, the 30 to 35-year-old group, we can see that, so the bars here are representing their habitual lenses in gray, the single vision lens in dark blue, and the multifocal lens in light blue. we can see that these younger wearers, the early 30-somethings, did prefer the single vision lens for pretty much everything. But as we moved to the group that was a little older, that was approaching 40 years old, we start to see those lens preferences change. And you can see that a good portion of these, what we would consider non-presbyopic contact lens wearers did prefer the multifocal for vision at various different distances and overall comfort. So as you're, fitting contact lenses in your maybe emerging presbyopic contact lens wearers, it's good to think that some of our uncomfortable contact lens wearers in their early 40s or maybe late 30s could actually benefit from starting a multifocal a little earlier than life than what's typically practiced clinically. I think most people don't reach for that multifocal until that near vision is really blurry. But this evidence suggests to us that we could actually, I say we because I'm kind of in this age group, our patients in their late 30s could actually benefit from a multifocal earlier in life, and certainly patients in their early 40s, before that sustained near vision has become really blurry. The next tip for optimizing vision is to follow the fitting guide. I usually say something like, to my students, lose your pride, follow the fitting guide. The fitting guide exists to make you and the manufacturer successful in fitting multifocal contact lenses. The goal is to sell lenses here, right? And so the manufacturers have spent a lot of time and money and resources on devising these fitting guides so that you're most successful. Now, if you look through most fitting guides, most of them are pretty common sense. And I can understand why some people just don't follow the fitting guide because they feel like, oh, well, I can figure out what lenses to pull. But it's important to remember that each, optical design has nuance to it. That each optical design is unique, has its own sort of bells and whistles, tips and tricks that will make you successful when fitting that lens. Almost every fitting guide you look through, maybe 50% of the steps are common sense to you, but half of them may not be. Some of the suggestions for what to do, especially when you're troubleshooting, may not be what the choice you would have chose initially, but because the manufacturer understands their lenses and how to be most successful with them, they've determined what step along the way, every single roadblock is going to make you most successful in fitting the lens. So while it can seem silly, or you can almost feel silly checking the fitting guide every time you're pulling a lens or troubleshooting a lens, I really encourage you to rely on the fitting guide and use the fitting guide to make your day easier, make your chair time less, and make your patient happier, because the fitting guide is really going to help lead you to success. The next step in optimizing vision is to educate the patient about what the heck you're doing. Patient education, I think, is maybe the most important part of a multifocal fitting process, especially in the beginning, especially with a new wearer. And that's because adaptation is a really big part of the fitting process. We don't prescribe these lenses on day one because patients need to adapt to them over time, over a 10-day, 2-week period, in order to achieve their best vision and in order for us to best troubleshoot the lenses. Most patients are going to need 1 to 2 weeks of adaptation to the design in order to determine if the lenses are effective for them at all. And the adaptation period can be frustrating if the patient's not prepared for it. And if they're not prepared for it, it can lead to early discontinuation. I've found in my practice, if I talk to the patient about that adaptation period before they experience it, they're much more likely to accept it and to not get frustrated by it than if I just send them out the door with the lenses and say, good luck, see you in a couple weeks. And there's actually evidence to support this, that that adaptation is a thing with multifocal contact lenses, and patients do need time to adjust to and adapt to the multifocal contact lens design. I usually say, they need time to figure out how to find the sweet spot in the lenses in order to have success. This study by Fernandez et al. Showed that after 15 days of adaptation, monovision performed worse than multifocal contact lenses when it came to vision and light distortions, which is really interesting, right? Again, showing that multifocals are better than monovision, but also really underlining the importance of adaptation, that maybe at day one, that wasn't the case, but after 2 weeks of adaptation, multifocals do better. Similarly, another study, this is a different study by the Fernandez group, that after a 15-day period, near vision improved in the dominant eye, distance vision improved in the non-dominant eye. And it really showed that patients are adapting to that multifocality between the lens over time. So again, this was a group of patients that compared multifocal to monovision lenses. And we see that after we allow that period of adaptation, that multifocals perform best. This group concluded that practitioners will have greater success if they prepare their patients for that adaptation period and let them know that their vision will get better over time. And I totally agree with that conclusion. I've always kind of thought that, just sort of anecdotally in my practice. And so I love when I can read a paper, read something science and evidence-based that suggests that as well, that communication with your patient when it comes to adaptation is so, so important. So let's talk about some best strategies for educating our patients. How can we best educate them to ensure success at that follow-up visit? I start by explaining how the lenses work, and this doesn't have to take all day, right? This can be really simple. So I usually just say something like, this is a new optical design. These lenses focus multiple images on the back of your eye at the same time. And your brain kind of has to figure out how to find the sweet spot in the lenses. By taking 10 seconds to explain that, patients really understand that, oh, okay, this is different. So I understand why this might feel weird. It's also really helpful to sort of predict the symptoms they might experience over that trial period so that they're not surprised by those symptoms. And so that when they experience those symptoms, they just sort of, maybe in their head just sort of nod and say, oh yeah, she said that was going to happen. So I let them know that they might experience, sort of fluctuating vision, that things might be readable, but feel off, that they might get some glare and halos, but that's normal. And that the more they wear their lenses, the less those symptoms will be bothersome and noticeable to them. As well, I let them know that we can make changes at the follow-up, but that I need them to adapt before they make those changes, or before I can make those changes confidently. That even if they experience bothersome symptoms over the trial period, I'm confident that we can troubleshoot and address those changes after their adaptation period. I just need them to get through that adaptation period. And finally, conveying a lot of confidence in the lenses and your ability to fit them and troubleshoot them is so, so important. Your patient will think about that if they experience periods of frustration during the trial period. So being able to express confidence, enthusiasm about the lenses, and confidence and enthusiasm about your ability to refine their vision when they come back for that follow-up is really helpful in their confidence in you and their ability to accept, any subpar visual experiences along the way. So in conclusion, this is sort of the big picture things that we talked about today, considering how vision and comfort work together and influence one another to sort of establish our presbyopic contact lens wearer's entire wearing experience. So as we are fitting presbyopes in multifocal contact lenses, we need to consider comfort and vision the entire way, and consider how both of those things affect one another. We can do that by really first addressing comfort only by doing things like refining the ocular surface, addressing dry eye and meibomian gland disease, allergies. By choosing a daily disposable whenever we possibly can. Again, we're not quite there yet with our astigmatic presbyopes, but we will get there soon with the daily disposables. But our spherical patients should all be in a daily disposable to really optimize comfort. And then thinking about comfort, we want to think about nailing the vision. And by really addressing vision, we can obviously address our patients' visual needs, but also their comfort needs. And we can do that by the laundry list of things here, using good starting data, always choosing a multifocal, considering things like astigmatism and emerging presbyopia, following the fitting guide. And I think maybe the most important thing is educating our patients, talking to our patients, letting them know that you're confident in these designs, and they should be confident in the lenses and in your ability to fit them. So that is all I have for you today. I'm going to see, this is my email address. If you want to reach out to me, please feel free. I love talking to people after this. There's a couple questions coming in here. First question, how do you overcome a patient reaction to vision is never clear, even after multiple tweaking of prescription and different daily lens design? That's a good question. And that's always a tough one, right? One thing I didn't mention explicitly here was kind of setting expectations in the beginning of the fitting process. Setting expectations in the beginning by saying, sort of underlining the benefit of these lenses, that we're going to get a full range of vision. So vision may not be perfect at every distance, but the fact that you have good vision at every distance is what we're kind of going for here, is really important. I hear you though, that if they say the vision is never clear at any distance, that's not acceptable. In those cases, I try to really optimize one specific distance. So try to really determine what their main is distance most important to them, is near most important to them. I tend to find most patients prioritize near or sort of intermediate vision. And I try to really hone in on that by letting them know, if I really nail the near vision, your distance might suffer just a little bit, or vice versa. And so talking about that sort of give and take a little bit. Next question, what is your success rate in fitting new contact lens patients who need multifocal lens? How many visits does it take on average? Too many changes too quickly? Good question. I think a lot of the patients that I'm fitting new contact lens wearers in multifocals are oftentimes emmetropes or low myopes, low hyperopes. So those patients that have never needed visual correction at any time in their life. And when they hit presbyopia, it is like, we've all had these patients. It's like the sky is falling, right? Like they've never experienced blur in their life. And so presbyopia really spins them for a loop. I actually find I have a good success rate with these patients, these new contact lens wearers, because they are highly motivated to not wear glasses because it just seems so bothersome to them. I will say there's a range of visual demands with these patients. They tend to have sort of higher visual expectations, again, because they've never experienced near blur. These are the patients where education, early education and communication is really important with. You really want to make sure that their expectations are in the right place, that they're confident in the fitting process, but also know that it's a process, that it's not going to be perfect on day one, and that it might require a couple of visits. I don't find as a rule that these patients are keeping me, coming back 5, 6, 7 times into my chair. I can usually wrap those fits up in, 2 or maybe 3 visits. But honestly, that emmetropic presbyope is a really great patient base to serve with multifocal contact lenses, because they don't want to be in glasses. They've never worn glasses. They do not want to start now. And so while they can seem like a challenge at first, again, because they're so frantic, they can also be a really rewarding patient to fit. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up. I know there's other courses for everyone to attend. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. And again, please feel free to reach out, shoot me an email. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.